Hello, everybody.
Should we sit in that order next?
Hope everyone's having a lovely afternoon. As Steve mentioned, I'm Jack Benjamin, U.S. reporter at The Media Leader, and a gamer myself. I'm one of the people that had my hands raised. And for the next half hour, we have a really lovely panel to talk to you about getting gaming on the media plan. So we have Kanchan Lad, Head of Media, Content and Gaming Partnerships at Papa John's, Stef Jansen, Business Development Director at Finecast, and Lucy Rissik, founder of boutique gaming agency Brotherhood of Brand and former head of partnerships at EA. I will be encouraging audience questions, so feel free, if you have a burning question, to raise your hand, and I'll try and notice you. Otherwise, I'll call on you midway and toward the end if there are any questions. But Stef, I want to start with you because Finecast is obviously known for being in the TV world, and gaming's been around for half a century in various forms at least. So what in the past few years has occurred to get people like yourself and at Finecast really interested in exploring the gaming space?
I mean, I think there's been obviously a lot of changes in the way that TV is consumed in that time, and also the way that gamers interact with their content. So obviously the web and kind of broadband speeds and things like that, enabling both of those things. So we're predominantly an addressable TV company, so we look at targeting specific audiences based on data. So we work with, for example, Game, the retailer, and LiveRamp to target gaming audiences when they're streaming TV content in video on demand services. A lot of the time we're serving into connected TV devices like games consoles, so Xbox and PlayStation. And just this blurring, I think, between TV and gaming. You see Netflix and TikTok and people like that talking about gaming. It's essentially this video streaming or video entertainment kind of content that is constantly crossing the boundaries. And I think particularly, we've heard already from Reese talking about ITV, to find those younger audiences, you need to start looking into those environments, because that's actually where a lot of their streaming hours are now.
Would you say that those types of audiences are difficult to reach outside of gaming, or has there been a lot of overlap?
I think, we saw linear TV in the Daniel's presentation from Samsung. That is kind of declining, and those audiences are spending a lot of time in streaming. I think where we operate, because we operate in that streaming kind of video on demand world, we do see some overlap in the audiences, because they tend to be also the people gaming. But I think increasingly, when you look at those, definitely the younger end of the audience, the 16-24s, they are becoming very difficult to reach in the traditionally ad-funded platforms. So that kind of is important to us and the brands we work with to try and connect with those audiences.
And Kanchan, can you speak a little bit about the past few years at Papa John's and how you guys have gotten into gaming, let's say, pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, and up until today? What have you guys been doing?
So it's actually been around 3-4 years that we got into gaming, and it started pre-pandemic. We started testing a few things, which is with our existing digital strategies and targeting. We just identified gamers as one of our core audiences, and that was all through test and learn. I know we've used that word a lot in the last couple of days, but that's how we identified them to be an audience. And then the questions and the conversations started from there as to how do we really engage this audience? How do we talk to this audience separately outside of our usual campaigns that we do? And that's when we identified Call of Duty as one of our partners. It was kind of a natural fit. It's because we were talking to Twitch. I know we have someone from Twitch today, right? So we were talking to them, and we identified that pizza is one of the top food preferences of Twitch streamers and content creators. So it was kind of a natural fit for us. 1 in 4 households play Call of Duty. So that's where the partnership started. That was the first partnership, and now I think it's been 3-4 years. Pandemic, we saw great spike in the audiences in terms of gamers, and also very diverse gamers, right? I think during pandemic, lots of people just started getting into gaming because they wanted to escape, or they wanted to have social connections. So the audiences grew, it became more diverse. And that kind of interested us in terms of, how do we then talk to these people through different activations. Now we've been working with lately Alexa team in order to develop a voice skill for gamers, just as an added convenience for them. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I would say we've just scratched the surface. We have a lot to do.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, gaming and pizza does seem like a pretty natural overlap. I think we can all agree. That sounds like a pretty good Thursday night type of thing. But of course, there's brands outside of just pizza companies that would be well involved and want to get well involved in gaming. Lucy, can you speak a little bit to some of the other overlaps that you see between gamers' interests and other brand opportunities?
Of course. So, I mean, I think what people often do try and do is they often put gamers into a box. And they sit there and do think, to be honest, it's fast food and energy drinks. And they think of this 14-year-old boy in a dark bedroom. And without doubt, gamers are not this. So not only do I do partnerships and I've worked with multiple brands, one of the other things I do is I'm on the board for Women in Games. And one big audience that people forget is that 50% of games are played by women. And you often see it with the targeting and the way that people look at, sort of traditionally the brands that have been involved with gaming, people are thinking much more along the sort of male side, the men's side. If you look at sort of the energy drinks or that sort of, it's all, even someone like Gillette, they very much focused on sort of men in the audience. What happened about 2 years ago was someone like Gillette Venus turned around and went, actually, we need to be talking to this audience too. So they did an amazing partnership into Animal Crossing where they put, I think it was about 30 different skin conditions that you could have, so you could showcase yourself in the game. Now, the other bits I've worked on, so I'm ex-EA and I've worked across lots of different brands, from Sims to FIFA to Need for Speed was my big one. But one of the big ones that we did was actually looking at something like Need for Speed, where they went, the average age of a player for Need for Speed was really 35. Who knew? So we were looking at what can we do to also make sure it appeals to the existing audience, but also bringing other brands in to help. And what I've done is I've worked with streetwear brands, street artists, that sort of side, to also make sure the culture's right in the game and to really kind of bring in a different audience that is highly engaged, that really trust as well, that really want to work with, understand this sort of partnership. And that's also the key, I think, is even as a brand or you thinking of it as a media outlet, is making sure that there is relevance and authenticity to what you're doing. Gamers are the most cynical audience, and they will call out. They will be like, why is there a can of Coke in RuneScape? Which is like medievally, if anyone doesn't know. But they notice these things, and I think that's also the key. And that sometimes it's not to go for the biggest games. So not everyone needs to be in FIFA. I think it's making sure you know where your audience, who your audience are, what are their interests, and actually then you'll find these games that have amazing audiences. Just as an example, a game lots of people haven't heard of is Star Stable, which is a Swedish game, fantastic. It's basically Sims on horses, is the best way of putting it. But they're targeted at 8 to 18-year-old girls, and they have 1 million players a month, and it's a PC game. Now, trying to get that 8 to 18-year-old audience, particularly female or girls, is really hard. So I think it's sometimes not necessarily looking for the obvious routes, it's sometimes really looking into the sector and sort of understanding the different audiences.
Mm. I want to delve into that in a moment because there's definitely a lot to unpack in terms of how we targeting audiences and especially niche demographics. But of course, I also want to mention, get some conversation around media planning generally and the budgeting for this. And we're entering an era, where yesterday we were talking all about the rising cost of living, and that's going to affect media budgets. And gaming, of course, is Sam used the word nascent quite a few times. I don't want to say unproven, but maybe less established than linear TV might be. So how do you, and this might be a good question for Stef or anyone else on the panel, how do you go to your boss and say, oh, I want to do a big media plan in this game, when there are other sort of opportunity costs out there to consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one, being an addressable TV company, we've had to address as well in terms of, how do I target these audience and what is their value? So I think, as Sam kind of really touched on, bringing it closer to the kind of core of the video plan. So we already, partner with people like Audience Project and measure reach across the whole thing. Is like, if we can start quantifying the incremental amount of audience we're getting, particularly in that younger end a lot of the time when you compare it to the older demographics of linear TV, to demonstrate the audience, but then also the effectiveness of that reach. So that's where things like web uplift or sales uplift studies that we do, so we can start kind of directly showing, TV is a very established medium, it delivers ROI, this is what it does, but actually we can enhance that by adding these incremental pieces onto it that deliver. So I think, having those proof points and making it quantifiable is really important.
And is that something that is well developed or being developed, or where do you feel in terms of being able to prove return on investment for gaming? Whereabouts are we?
I mean, for us as a business, we're really early days in this space. Like I said, we're reaching gaming audiences, but we're reaching them out of game. I think we're exploring reaching them around the game, so predominantly when people are streaming gaming or esports content. But to be able to demonstrate the value of going into those environments, we need to be able to quantify what it's adding to what we're already doing.
Kanchan, you of course have a lot of partnerships that are around gaming, not just an in-game feature, although I would like to hear sort of examples about both in-game advertising but also around the game.
So examples?
Yeah.
Just before I get into that, I wanted to add to what you were talking about in terms of this really difficult climate that we have in terms of the cost of living crisis. Interestingly, gaming hasn't seen as much as decline is what I've seen as compared to lots of other high-ticket items or even low-ticket. So that was one of the things that kind of helped us have conversations and ongoing conversation that, what we have an audience. They are interested in to be engaged and they are ready to spend. That was one of the key things I think that we thought of this year. And in terms of the kind of examples, I think we just, over the period of time, we looked at a full funnel approach, right from how do we drive awareness, how do we bring a gaming partnership to life. So we looked at co-branded pizza boxes, which were quite a hit, considering we actually served pizza in them and people kept it as a collectible thereafter. So that was quite interesting to see. And it created a lot of UGC as well, because there was that 4-week window in which many households, millions of households, had those limited edition boxes. So that was one thing, and then obviously creating interesting assets, measuring in terms of the attention as well as the engagement. That kind of helped us move the gamers through the funnel. And then we also created a custom bundle, a meal deal sort of thing, which was kept in mind looking at the audience, the gamers. What's the average ticket order value they're likely to spend. So keeping in mind all of these considerations, we created a meal deal. We worked with our gaming partners for those double XP points in game items just to keep them interested and to increase the frequency. I think it's just having all of these little activations and looking at it, zooming out of the tactical approaches and looking at it as a full funnel approach kind of helped us as well as to understand the success of it right from year one. So we saw a lift in consideration. We saw new customers coming in through this kind of campaign. And one thing I think we've realized over the years is gaming partnerships need to be long-term. It cannot be tactical. It cannot be just one-off placement because it's not going to drive that kind of results. It has to be meaningful. It has to be done over a period of years for the gamers to actually start engaging with you. And yeah, I think, again, even this year, we are seeing lots of people just on social media just asking us, when are you partnering with your next, like a gaming title, what are you doing next? So that's quite interesting because it looks like gamers have started associating the brand with a certain kind of gaming, which is where we wanted to go.
Especially a yearly release like Call of Duty.
Yeah.
It creates an expectation. Are there any questions out in the audience at this juncture? If not, I can continue. Got one in the back there first, and then striped shirt as well.
Hi there. This is a question mainly for Lucy. Hi, Lucy. I'm Alex, VP of Sales at Adverty. We do in-game advertising like bus stops inside the virtual world. You were speaking earlier around, how do we get the brands to kind of actually set aside budget for the gaming space? And obviously you're speaking with the agencies themselves as well. Do you feel like we're at a point now where they're completely educated on gaming, or are they still feeling like it is the stereotype of the 16-year-old scoffing Doritos and drinking Pepsi in the basement?
Do you know what? I think there's probably a mix. So I think we are getting somewhere, but it's not great. And I know some people have had some terrible examples of trying to explain gaming to people at all different times. What I would say is the pandemic has massively helped. And actually, look at what the luxury industry has done. Look where things have gone with where they see gaming. And look, we had a pandemic. They couldn't do fashion shows. They couldn't do anything like that. Culture in generally moved in game. So something like Roblox, when they had Little Nas X, they had all sorts of different things, Marshmallow and Fortnite, and they did release parties inside the game because they realised this is an audience that is 100% focused. Can't really, my son tries, but you can't really dual screen when you're gaming. But also, there were people looking at things, what's happening, Moncler into Fortnite, all these kind of luxury brands seeing this as actually it being a really viable media alternative. But without doubt, there is that still education piece. I remember probably 2016, 17, we were speaking to ASOS, and even the brand as ASOS at that point, we were like, look, your audience games, and they kind of got it. And we did some stuff with Sims and with Need for Speed for it, but it did take a bit of conversation. I do think gone are the days of being, whether being a games brand or an agency walking in having to explain gaming has stopped, but I think it's probably so much wider and broader. There's more nuances to it. And, people, you get a lot of like, what's going on in esports? Should we do that? And I think there's often actually brands with what they're doing, a lot of them are bamboozled about where to go. And a lot of them are being approached all the time. Like, come and be involved with this game. What about this? And actually what I think they all need to do is it's coming up with a really good strategy. What suits your audience? Where are you looking to expand to? And I think it's now gone sort of deeper than just going, I know, there's Monster Energy, Adrenaline game. Well, hey, let's go. I think, we are going deeper and it's more interesting.
I think I had another question in the striped shirt there.
Hi there, this is Craig from Cara Global Partnerships. Lucy, you kind of just touched on this a little bit there, but we've heard a lot about how sort of more adjacent brands to gaming like Papa John's has utilised the gaming universe to access these really engaged audiences. But I guess what advice or avenues can less endemic brands to gaming utilise to access these audiences?
So this is really good because I can speak about partnership I've been involved with, so thank you. As I said, I work for, what I do is Women in Games. So what we've had in the last 2 weeks, if anyone's seen it, is we've just been part of a Dove partnership. So you look at something like Dove and you wouldn't necessarily think gaming. But what something like Dove has done, they spent a lot of time on research, of thinking their ideas. They have a strong brand voice about this idea of real beauty, and then doing the spin of making virtual beauty real is a really lovely way of doing it. And I think without doubt the non-endemic brands, there is without doubt space. I mean, like that. It's actually thinking about it. And I've had brands that aren't in it, makeup brands, and they haven't quite done enough research or done enough thinking about it. As I said, the games audience is cynical. So what I would be saying is it's sometimes thinking round it rather than going in and going, right, we're going to change the face of the games industry. And that's a lot of what happens. I've had people going, no, we're going to get rid of toxicity. We're going to tell all gamers they have to do a course if they're toxic online. And I'm like, well, then you need to actually realize gamers just set up a new profile. Like, they don't care. They keep going. You know, someone like Dove and what's happened there is really good, and sort of seeing that they took it seriously and they've got a long-term plan. And I think that's the other key, is that long-term plan.
I think it would be really interesting to sort of continue some of that discussion in terms of games audience. I think a lot of gamers are known for being, as you say, cynical, or often get a reputation of being ad averse. Obviously, that's not true, but perhaps there does need to be some care in terms of strategy, in terms of you know, how you plan to reach certain types of audiences. So what is sort of the best way to reach gamers? You mentioned Monster Energy, and I hope there's no one from Monster Energy, but I wasn't
meaning it's a bad thing either.
It's not necessarily
they've done well.
a bad thing.
They've done
right.
what
I wrote a piece for the Media Leader maybe a month ago, and it highlighted they were all over Death Stranding, for instance, and that was a game about the apocalypse. So it was a bit, you know, strange about feeling really energetic about the apocalypse. What are some you know, examples of perhaps like better media strategies that you have all seen? And Kanchan, you can also talk, you know, if there's one that you want to highlight specifically about Papa John's you think is quite unique as well.
I think I do get requests and get approached for, let's build an island here, and let's do this, let's do that. So lots of these ideas keep coming in. But I guess the question that we always ask is, how sustainable is it? How safe is it for the brand? And you know, like you said, how authentic and relevant is it for us? So these kind of filters help us, you know, identify the right partnership to proceed with. So yeah, but I think, like I said, we have a lot more to do. So we have been having these kind of conversations to identify what other spaces can we get into. Yeah, it's a good starting point, at least for us to have those ideas in. Yeah.
Stef, Lucy?
I think it kind of goes back to that point of scale and relevance that we had earlier. So when you go in-game and you're with a really kind of cynical audience, then yes, you're going to need to be really relevant. But you know, if you're around the game and it's an audience who are streaming some content, and you know it's a relatively mass audience, then yeah, I can put a 20-second pre-roll before they stream that content for half an hour, and they're a savvy audience, right? So they get that the advertising is funding that. You know, we're a business that's about trying to increase the relevance, but to be able to do that at scale. So yeah, I think for us it's very much just thinking about that kind of relevance versus scale, and how different types of activation in gaming are suited to each one.
It's not easy, that stuff either. I do remember, you know, having at EA media teams that would go out and come to you. They're like, oh, we've got this amazing thing, and it's sort of animal feed, and we're like, no, it's not going in the game. I can't sell that. So it is sort of definitely, you have to look at that, and it's a tough call sometimes with how you look at it. I think there's some great stuff out there that people are doing differently, and I think these days the media side and the partnerships, people are thinking differently and looking at it in a different way. When you said about the Monster Energy, it just reminded me of when I was working on one of the Need for Speeds, the one that was just Need for Speed. They had a huge criticism because they only had Monster Energy and Hot Wheels in it. And the whole game, there was no other product placement. This is also the other thing you've got to be very careful of, is making sure that there is the right thing. And their reviews were, it just looks like it's a post-apocalyptic world where only Monster Energy and Hot Wheels have survived. Because the whole thing was so dark as well. It wasn't great. But I think, there's so much opportunity out there. What I would say is really look for things that suit your audience, or the audience you want to reach. Like, spend time looking at it, and it's not necessarily FIFA. It will be some of these other ones, some of these smaller games that are doing interesting things. And even consider PC games. So many games start on PC before they think about PUBG. That's where that started, and then it went huge. Think about, and sometimes, as we said, Jack and I were talking before, there are these different pockets of audience. So I think it's looking at that, and they're not all under 18. Some of them are older, and it is a great way to interact with them.
Mm-hmm. Indie games, AAA games, you have Activision, obviously Call of Duty is maybe the biggest game, every year around the fall. But there's also indie developers that I'm sure would be
coming
open
out,
to it.
yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? We've got a few minutes left. Question here up front, if we get a mic.
Hiya. Hello. You've talked about some really great examples of like brands that have done it really well. Obviously, there's
You can
lots
ask
of
me who's done
opportunity.
it badly.
Sorry, no, I wasn't going to.
That's
In
also
terms
good.
of much more in-depth partnerships, long-term, and it's sort of, in the main, sounds like an opportunity to drive a much deeper engagement with a very engaged, specific audience. Are there opportunities that are perhaps lighter touch, that require, not saying less planning, obviously you need to do it well, but less full-on partnerships, a bit less?
It doesn't always have to have the in-game element. There are, without doubt. I'm going to give an example because I also know the people involved were here. If you look at something like Gucci and Xbox, that's without doubt wasn't an in-game partnership. It wasn't easiest to put together, but it was something that created a lot of noise. But was done outside the game. It involved the game. It involved the console and everything else. You can do those very easy. Not everything does have to have that element. One we did for Need for Speed, and although it's not strictly a brand, was we took the cover car, that's the key art, and there was a customized Polestar, and we actually made the car in real life. And what we did to create noise and to do something that goes outside the games industry is we actually got it painted by the street artist Tristan Eaton. And then we put it in Art Basel in Miami. So what we're doing is, it's like, how do you make that noise? And okay, that's not light, but there are other ways of doing things that are, I realise that. But that don't have to have that in-game element. And sometimes it's to do with inspired. I think there's quite a lot to do with clothing, about inspired by collections. Even if you went into the general clothing world, you look at what Nigerian football kits have done with Nike. They took them and then they created a whole inspired by collection. And I think that side is also really interesting, of doing, thinking sort of slightly different. This is inspired by the game, or, thinking around it.
Does it have to be that different lens than, say, a film release that comes out?
It does. It doesn't. It just lasts longer with gaming. That's why we do it.
Okay.
So, sorry, just to go on that. So would you say, obviously, as well as the in-gaming opportunity, it's sort of games provide a useful vehicle for you to tap into to talk to people about their passions and engage with them on that level, not
Without
necessarily just within the pure vertical of gaming.
100%. So, I mean, look, the best partnerships look like friendships. The best partnerships, people are going, my God, I didn't realise North Face and Supreme were friends. How lovely. And then, but what you want to do is having your brand spoken about through their voice. And that's what helps make it that authentic. So exactly like that, you're a brand, you want to work with a game. It's I do see it, and I see people will go, no, should be the language you must use. It's like, no, let the game speak, let the talk about your brand. But these are highly engaged. They do trust the games to a certain degree. They will listen in a different way. I mean, I think that association, but you build it right. All I would say is that if you're going to do sort of a lighter touch, don't just do one thing. I would be building it outright and sort of really thinking, what's your strategy for a year, 18 months?
So we're nearly out of time. I just wanted to ask one last question for each panelist, very quickly. What would you say the future looks like in the next just 12 months for this area? What would you like to see, and maybe what's the big challenge, and as briefly as possible? Kanchan?
Yeah, I can.
I'm sorry, it's a big question, I know.
I think, personally, I feel I would really love to see people buying pizza virtually. and then we deliver it while they are playing
that.
in the
That's a
game.
good plan.
What I'm scared of is, especially in these FPS games or these kind of, what if someone just comes and destroys and bombs the store virtually, because that's the brand safety side of things, right? Like, how do you protect your brand from any kind of damage that way? So, but yeah, that's something I would really like to see and like to work on.
Great. Stef, really quick.
I think the next 12 months for us, we'd really like to test and learn, to steal your phrase, the kind of being in the streaming of video and esports content at scale in a measurable way with the appropriate brand safety in place.
Lucy, can you give me 5 words?
Oh no,
No, I'm
that's
joking.
brutal. For me, I think it's just women in games has got to be about the inclusivity, diversity, and everything else within games, and so people realising women are gamers, gamers aren't a set person. I think without doubt, that's it.
That's a great way to leave it. Everyone, please give a round of applause for a great panel.